StitchyTube, settle down and watch StitchyTube. Hey everybody. I'm noticing my cheeks are shiny. I have this stuff I got at Bath and Body Works that's like you just spray it on your face. That's what I did. So now I have a shiny face. How are ya? This is StitchyTube number 45, lucky number 45 as always. And welcome if you're new, welcome if you're not new, and welcome to anybody who's not really sure what they are. I've had a great couple of weeks here getting some stitching done, and so that's very satisfying. And I wanted to start by announcing the winner. And as always, I forgot to draw that person's name. So here that person's name is. If this is your name, you win from last time. Get a hold of me in the comments below. I even wrote a reminder. There's no excuse. So for the drawing next time, I am giving away two things. Another pack of cards from Primitive Things, and I carry her charts in my shop. They're awfully cute. And a chart by Kathy Barrick called Strawberry Blossoms. I figure we're kind of at that berry time of year with summer. And look at that hairdo. You gotta love that. Very, very cute. And so if you'd like to enter for next time, you don't have to like me. You don't have to subscribe. All you have to do is say, what is your favorite needlework tool right now? Do you have something that you're really using that you're like, oh, I'm super into this? I have never been an Orts saver. And I think those of you who've watched my Hang With Me videos, you'll see me like just throw threads on the floor, which has been my way forever. But I don't know why I got to thinking about it, but Jennifer always has an Ort jar, and so I bought this little shaker box at Market this year, and I put the lid away because I'm not using the lid right now. But I've started saving my Orts. For what reason? I don't know, but it's kind of satisfying in a way because you're like, oh, I must be stitching a lot because these are just the little, 3-inch pieces that are left at the end of my thing. So I'm super into that right now. That's my needlework tool. So what is your favorite tool right now? Maybe not historically. Can be anything. Can be whatever. All right. I wanted to talk today, do a list of 10. I can't remember if I did a list of 10 last time. Did I? I don't think so. It's maybe been a couple times since I did a list of 10. 42 I know I did. So I want to talk about 10 things about reproducing samplers. And I am in the process of reproducing a sampler right now and hope to get onto another one real soon. I've got a model stitcher lined up for this one. But I know a lot of you have had questions in the past about reproducing samplers, and at some point maybe I'll make a video more in-depth about it, but I thought I'd just kind of list 10 things that I do when I'm reproducing a sampler. Step number 1, of course, is looking for a sampler to reproduce. And people often have questions about that, like how do you go about finding a sampler or acquiring a sampler? When I started, I don't know why I was looking around online and I saw an antique sampler for sale, and it was way too much money for the condition it was in, but I was like, oh my gosh, this is so rare. I can't believe I found an antique sampler. They're not rare. There's lots of them. And they're in all price ranges, and there are lots of different places that you can look. I've purchased from Madalena and eBay, and I bought from an online auction house at one point. You can, of course, look at like antique shops, but not every area. Like here in the South, I not one time have ever seen an antique piece of needlework at an antique store. There's just not, it's not as common to see antique samplers in the South, more towards the Northeast in the United States. So you look around online, find places if you're interested, and don't, I guess if you were looking at buying an antique sampler, I would say don't panic and buy the first one that you see that you kind of like, because there are lots. And what I look for in a sampler, as someone who reproduces samplers, but I also stitch a lot, is I want to pick out something that looks like it's going to be a lot of fun to stitch. So there are different things you can look for as far as like what makes something fun to stitch. For me, it's variety. So I know I've talked about it before, but I love a border that's not repeating, or maybe kind of an interesting border. For some reason, I hate honeysuckle borders. I don't know. Hate's kind of a strong word. Do I have? They're very spindly. The flowers are very just like, kind of lines. And I like to fill areas. So I don't know why. I don't find them fun to stitch for myself. They're very pretty though. And I like things that aren't symmetrical because it's more interesting to kind of mix it up and not have to repeat the same motif a couple of times. Colors I look for, maybe an interesting subject matter, just something different. There are verses that you see over and over again in samplers, and so some of those, it's just like you see them so much that it's kind of like, it's kind of like the "Don't Worry, Be Happy" of samplers, right? Remember how the "Don't Worry, Be Happy" song by Bobby McFerrin got way overplayed, and even though it was a lovely, pretty song that was happy, we all just got sick to death of it. It's kind of the same thing with samplers. There are a few verses that you see over and over again. And so one of them is like, "Jesus, let thy gracious name stand at the first effort of this infant's hand, and while her fingers over the canvas move, beseech thy heart to seek thy love, her heart to seek thy love," or something like that. So there are a number of different, and they're fine. They're like nice verses and things. It's just like when you look at a lot of samplers, it's like you just kind of think, oh, it's common, even though you guys might not see it that way. And so I also look obviously for price. There are samplers I've seen online that I would love to reproduce that are $10,000, and so I'm not going to do that. But it's just kind of a matter of like looking around, getting ideas, seeing, something that looks interesting that I feel like I would have fun stitching, and then with the hope that other stitchers would have fun stitching it too. So step number 2 is acquiring that sampler. And depending on where you're buying from, there are different ways you can go about it. If you find something on an auction house where it's not like an auction item, but it's like a, just like a list of here's what we've got, and like an antique store, sometimes you can bargain and say, hey, look, I'm interested in this. Could you take 10% off if I, just pay for it right now? A lot of times they're willing to deal with you. Sometimes they're not, and that's okay. Sometimes if you see a sampler that you like and you just kind of keep checking back in on it, you'll see the price go down. I never have had trouble where I bought something and I was like, oh, this is not an antique. There's always that, I think, fear when people think about like buying antiques, like what if I buy one and it's just a fake? There's not a lot of money in antique samplers typically. There was a sampler sold by the Betty Ring. It was Betty Ring's collection, I think before she died, that went for like $1.3 million. Beautiful. I'm going to put a picture of it here if I can find it so you can see it. Obviously, amazing, beautiful sampler, custom frame. There's just a lot to really like about that. And she was a historian, that was an expert in samplers. And so to buy one from her collection also was seen as a huge boon. So the $1.3 million samplers, I'm not up to that point yet. But it's just like anything else. What's your budget? It depends on you. Like maybe you have a really good job or you really want to splurge, you got some birthday money. Like it's just whatever. Samplers are worth whatever somebody is willing to pay, right? So you can see samplers on eBay where it's like, oh, this is a buy it now for $2,500, right? And I've been looking at them long enough where I'm like, no one's going to pay $2,500 for that. And nobody does. So is the sampler worth $2,500? If nobody wants to pay $2,500, I would suggest it's not worth that much. You'd have to, if you started lowering the price, you would find out what it's actually worth. And so for some people, it's like, well, I don't want to take less than that, because sometimes people make a poor decision when buying an antique, whether it's a sampler or anything else, and they do something and it's like, oh, they paid too much. And then when they sell it, they want to get back what they paid, and really it's not. I do look at condition when I buy samplers, but I'm willing to compromise on the condition if the sampler is really cool. There was one recently that I saw on eBay that it was really neat. It was a big central basket of flowers, and the pictures were not great, which, let me say, not great pictures can be a boon for a sampler collector, because if you look at enough of them, you can see like that's fine linen. The condition's pretty good. It's kind of blurry. But sometimes I've found things for like a really good deal because their picture was just crappy. And that's the technical term, crappy. What was I saying about that? Oh, anyway, there was a sampler on eBay, and I don't think they wanted necessarily a lot of money. It was a lot of money for the condition it was in. Basically, the center basket of flowers was still hanging together. And then it was just like huge holes in the fabric. Wherever there wasn't stitching, the stitching was kind of like clinging on to the fibers as best it could. And so like her name was still kind of in there and the border was still kind of in there, but it was just gaping holes. And I kind of kicked around. I was like, oh, it's a neat sampler. I don't know. I don't even know if it's still up. It was a neat sampler, but I think they wanted like $175 for it, and it's tatters. Like it would definitely be the worst condition. It's probably some of the worst condition that I've seen in a sampler for sale, really. And that's saying a lot. Okay. So anyway, you pay however you pay with PayPal, or they send you some kind of a, an invoice and you pay it with your debit or your credit card and you wait for it to get shipped. Now, when somebody ships you a sampler, let's say you buy one on eBay. A lot of times those are going to be coming from the UK because they're plentiful over there. And sometimes, it'll say like $80 shipping, but that's with the frame and the glass. And if you look at the frame and the glass and you're like, you know what? Those don't look original. I don't, you can ask sometimes like, hey, I don't need the frame or glass. If you could just pop it out and just send the sampler, a lot of times the shipping price will come way down again. And if it's something you think you're going to reframe and, just make that decision to pull it out. Now, obviously, if you thought the frame was pretty amazing and probably the original frame and glass, you might ask to have them keep it in. I have better luck with some. I got a sampler in the mail a couple weeks ago that the glass was just in a million pieces, and luckily the sampler was not affected, but I had to very, very carefully clean it up because there were just splinters everywhere. And I did get reimbursed for the broken glass, which is fine. But sometimes what they'll do is put blue painter's tape all over the glass. So that way, even if it cracks, the tape kind of hangs on to the broken glass in place so it doesn't slice up your picture. Sometimes too, you got to pay attention because they don't want to ship it. So it'll be like, yeah, this sampler is for auction or it's for sale, but it's local pickup only and it's in Staffordshire. So unless you want to spring for a ticket to England, you might not be able to pick it up. So then you just kind of wait and it comes. And when it arrives, now I haven't done this one yet. This is one I got that I was just talking about a couple weeks, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago. And it's really neat, guys. It's really, really cool. The verse, as you can see, is barely hanging in there. There just are little kind of slips of thread there. And I think I should be able to do enough research that I can piece the verse back together. But her name was Hannah. The black thread has just kind of come out. The rest of it is in wool. This is, I don't know, water damage. This is not holes. It's just stains. And so for some reason, this stayed real clean. It's got a couple of B-skeps here, which I think is cool. And for me, what was really neat is this bridge with this kind of back and forth running stitch to signify water. And you got to love this border. For me, that kind of reminds me of Stacey Nash, doesn't it? For some reason. I think it's really neat. This one's done in wools. So this is one, it's a bird's eye maple frame. And I don't know if it's it's probably not original. I don't know. I don't think it's old though. And the back here is the original wood that the sampler was affixed to. Now I haven't popped this one out yet. A lot of times they're nailed onto the wood with actual nails. Like metal nails. So anyway, when something comes and I'm going to reproduce it, for sure I take the glass off, take it out so I can see the picture easily. And you too don't want to leave it forever. Like once you get it reframed or put it back together, if it's on wood, you kind of want to take it off because wood's got a lot of acid in it and it will eat away at the sampler over time. Now this is one I took out to show you. This is my French cathedral sampler. It's one of the first ones I reproduced, and this is the original. You can see the fabric is very, very thin. And can you see the nail holes, the rusty nail holes? So I actually did pull this off, just very gently kind of popped it off of each nail so that it wouldn't be stuck on that board. Now this shows you again, it's one of the ways you can tell like, oh, I got a legitimate old sampler. You can see the colors are very pale on the front. On the back, they're a lot more vibrant. And look at how messy her back was. Go girl, you go girl. Just like me. Mine aren't quite that messy, but almost. So anyway, so that's that one. And the girl's name was Euphrasie. And she was young, I think. I don't remember how old she was. 9. She was 9. Actually, I'm just going to pull this down as long as you guys are here. Ugh. Here's the reproduction. So that's what that looks like. And obviously my fabric is not quite as thin as what hers had turned out to be. And I put it in an old frame. This frame comes chippy like that with chunks missing. I think it's really pretty. So, okay. So take it out of the frame. You kind of do an assessment. And then once you've got it apart, I just start charting it. And really, charting it is similar to the process of stitching it. So for me, I start just like when I stitch in the upper left corner. I kind of will estimate how big the sampler is going to be and what the stitch count might be. You can count how many stitches per inch and get the thread count, and then, you know, measure it and figure out, okay, it's probably about 400 stitches wide or whatever. I plug it into my program. I use a program called Mac Stitch because I work on an Apple computer. There are better programs, I feel, for PCs, but I like using a Mac, and so that's just kind of one of my El Guapos is to work with Mac Stitch. It doesn't have the symbols I would like, but otherwise it's just fine. Works just fine. So I'll start charting it just like I'm stitching it in the upper left corner. I typically will do the entire border first. And it's always kind of a gamble, like just like when you're stitching a border, is it all going to come together? Well, if I start here and go this and this and this and back up, is it going to match up? And what happens is, because these were girls that were anywhere from like 5 to 17 years old or whatever, a lot of times they're off by a half a stitch, a half a stitch, a half a stitch, a half a stitch, one stitch off, you know, and then, or they make counting mistakes where, you know, maybe their border is undulating and it's supposed to be, you know, 9, but then once in a while it's 10, they put 10 or 11. So then the problem is when you have a piece that's 400 stitches wide and a good number of half stitch mistakes, that adds up. And so your borders can sometimes not, and that's one of the tricky things that I'm working on right now with the sampler I'm reproducing. I'm not going to show it to you. I'll show it to you when it gets closer to being done. But the border, I got to that last corner and I was like, oh, I'm off by like 6 stitches. So I'm having to like fudge it in certain areas because I don't want to make stitchers make half stitch mistakes. That's not fun to stitch. And certainly it's not what the stitcher intended, to make all those half stitch problems. So, and then I start filling it in. Now when item number 5, I guess I'm not numbering these for you. I do have a list of 10. Is I typically don't worry about the colors. I don't pick the colors before I start charting. On my program that I use, you can pick DMC colors, sampler thread colors, Weeks Dye Works, Classic Color Works. You know, there's silks, different kinds of fibers. I typically will just pull up the DMC list because it's a good number of colors. You know, 300, almost 400 colors, and so I just, having used DMC since I was 11 or so, I just know the colors, and so I can look at a color on a sampler and go, oh, that's 730 is what I would estimate that to be. So I'll just pull up the colors that I see, and as I see another color pop up in the sampler, I'll put that one on. Sometimes I realize as I'm charting, oh, these 2 colors are actually the same color. It's just that over here it was kind of dirty, or over here it was kind of faded. And so you just kind of make adjustments as you go. But I don't worry. I don't pick the colors at the start. I just start charting with generally the colors. And I'm looking, you can look at your chart in different ways in your program, and this is true of a lot of cross stitch programs. So like I look at on the graph, and you can blow it up or shrink it down so you can see how things are going. I look at them as a colored square with the symbol inside, and for some reason to my eye That's the easiest way, rather than just doing color squares and rather than just doing symbols. It's the easiest way for me to keep track of what I'm doing. So then it really is just like stitching. You know, people say like, do you have to count every stitch? Yeah, you do. Just like stitching. But you know, it's not, I wouldn't say it's harder than stitching, except for that you're having to choose colors and things. It's pretty much the same process. Counting things out, you know, seeing where things fit. Like I said, sometimes all of these little tiny mistakes that the girl is making will add up over time, and you might have to adjust a motif this way or that way to make it kind of visually look like the original, even though to the half stitch you may not be accurate. Oh, I guess that was number 6 was, oh, no else. Okay, so number 6 is mistakes. So that's how I make adjustments for general mistakes. But let's say there's a tree and, you know, there's maybe one on either side of the central motif of a house. And there's 2 trees and they look visually like they're the same tree. But when you're charting them, you're like, oops, she made this one 2 stitches shorter, or this one, she got off on her counting in here. I leave those in. I leave those mistakes in because to me, sip of water with things in it. To me, what makes an old sampler look old and authentically made by a child is those mistakes. You don't necessarily see them, especially if you're not a stitcher. I think most people would look at it and go, you know, But sometimes, even stitchers, you see a sampler on the wall, you're not like, oh, that tree is 2 stitches shorter. Some of y'all do it, but not everybody. But I think texturally, as the whole piece goes, those mistakes are important to making them seem authentic. I've been seeing a lot online lately about, what do they call them? Influencers? Like on Instagram, they're people that are like makeup artists. And these people like they put this makeup on that's like, makes their face look like a robot face. Like it's just, there's no texture to their face. The bumps are all smooth. The color is all smooth. Their eyebrows look like they were, you know, airbrushed on, whatever. And so they'll do their makeup in such a way that they look like way too perfect. And then they run it through a filter and it's like, oh, you don't look like a person. A sampler needs to look like a person. A sampler needs to look like it was, like the girl stitched it. And to me, that's what makes it look. So you could, if you were reproducing a sampler, fix all the mistakes. So if you're saying like, oh, this tree is 2 stitches shorter than this one, you could say, you know what, I'm going to just make them both the same size. And you totally could do that. Now, it wouldn't be like a true all the way reproduction, because now you're changing what she did. But, I mean, is it what she intended? She probably meant to make them the same size. I guess to me, I like mistakes. But I mean, that goes back to the whole idea of wabi-sabi, which is the beauty of imperfection. And I think you see that even though you don't see it. I hope that makes sense. Okay, so then number 7 is color choices. Finally, like once it's charted, then I start pulling colors of threads to see how it's going to go. I pick the colors that are like on the front of the sampler. So that French Cathedral sampler I showed you, muted on the front, bright on the back. And a lot of times when you pull these old samplers apart and you look at the back, the colors are like, yeesh, yikes, because it's just like, whoa. They made do with what they had, and their taste of color maybe wasn't our taste. And you got to remember, these are children and they're working with what they have. And so it's maybe not necessarily what we, mainly adult stitchers in the 2019 era, want to see. But I think sometimes it can be beautiful. Now, like Nicola at Hands Across the Sea, she reproduces, I think, closer to what maybe the original colors were. They're gorgeous. She does a great job. The Scarlet Letter also does the same thing, where if you buy one of her charts and you pull all the threads, it looks brighter and it's beautiful. But to me, I like the look of an antique sampler just because, I don't know, it looks old and interesting. There's something Velveteen Rabbitish about it. You know how the Velveteen Rabbit was like loved, kind of threadbare. And so I kind of think that's great. Now, I do sometimes, I'll have people, and I think I did even with this French Cathedral sampler, where you know, I charted it and it was in these muted colors, and I mentioned somewhere, sometime, like, oh, the back was much brighter. And I don't know if you can see just how bright. They're not coming out as bright as they are. I mean, that is like apple, Granny Smith apple green, some of that. And I had somebody contact me and say, could you send me the conversion for what the colors were actually like? And no, I cannot. It's a lot of times the back of the sampler is just gibbledy, you know, jumbled. And I don't typically do that. So, and that's just my choice. What am I saying here? So, okay. So, and then the fabric, I try to pick fabric also that is close to the same size as the original. But sometimes I worry because a lot these old samplers sometimes were stitched on like 60 count. Well, we don't have 60 count. We have 56 count. You know, you can get some counts that are very fine, but I worry about scaring people away. That it's like, oh, this is in, you know, a high count. Now, I know I talked to Tanya at Scarlet House because she's had a few samplers on, you know, like the 46 count linens. And I asked if, you know, did you get any complaints about people like where, oh, I can't do this? And she said, no, she didn't receive any complaints about people with the fabric, because you can really just choose the count you like. And they're beautiful done small. My eyeballs aren't as good as they used to be. So especially if I'm stitching the model, I just can't. I maybe need to get stronger glasses, but I don't feel like I would enjoy stitching on anything finer than 40. I love 40 count. So pretty much that's what I use, unless the sampler fabric is chunkier than that. For the color of the fabric, again, I'm trying to match the look of what it was on the front of the sampler. And these girls didn't, I mean, really, these fabrics weren't hand dyed. They're natural products. And so it's kind of basically, how has it weathered over time? Was it in the sun? Was it in a drawer? I don't know if any of y'all have paid attention. Like if you get natural linen, it's a natural product. So sometimes, you know, I get a shipment in and it's like, oh, this is lighter than it was last time. Well, it's natural, which means it's coming in as the plant grew. So that's why you do see so much variety in sampler colors of fabric, is that just natural linen in and of itself can vary quite a bit. I think you can't really make a sampler look legitimately old unless you're willing to dye over the sampler once it's put together. And so I'm going to grab this example here. This is from Blackbird Designs. It is from their books, Thank You, Sarah Tobias. And I loved this sampler. I spilled something on it, I want to say. And this is, I think, the first time I did this. I got a spot on it somewhere that I could not get out, and I was like, oh, whatever. So I dyed over it with coffee and tea. And so the threads are also dyed. So the fabric is dyed with coffee and tea, but then the threads got over dyed too, so you see some variety in those. And to me, that looks really great, like an actual old sampler. See, it's pretty neat. But I know that, like, if you're stitching something that's like 400 by 300 stitches and it's all in silks, you may not want to risk throwing it in the coffee pot, right? So it's just kind of, that's to your discretion. But I think it's part of the reason why you sometimes see an old sampler and then you see the reproduction and you're like, it's close, but it's not really the same. It's not the same because it's not 250 years old. And so when you see something that's antique, it's just going to have a patina that it's hard to acquire in an actual, new sampler. Now, I remember reading a story in Cross Stitch and Country Crafts, maybe, or Treasures Magazine, where they had a sampler and they teach you how to like antique it. And they actually like cut holes in it and sanded it and like got nails wet and made them rusty and then left them to leach the rust onto the sampler. And I remember at the time I was like, why would you do that? I would totally do that today. I would totally do it. Okay, so then number 8 is to actually stitch the sampler. And to me, it's fun to see it come together when it's a sampler I've reproduced, but it does feel more like work because I'm making decisions all the way through. So like sometimes I'll start to lay a color in and I'm like, you know what, I thought this was going to be a good match. It is not. So I'm going to, rip this out and start over again with that color. I do have model stitchers stitch some of them for me, The problem that I run into there is that if I've picked the wrong color ahead of time, to them, they're just following the directions. And so I might get it back and say, oh, shoot, I wish I had gone with a, deeper green on that one or whatever. So there are pluses and minuses. It takes a long time, obviously, to stitch a sampler. And a lot of times they're big projects and there's a lot of, different just choices to be made. And so I do like using model stitchers, but I also like stitching them myself. Number 9 is kind of like the finishing of putting everything together. Finish the charting, fix mistakes. I have a model with a sampler stitcher now, and she was putting the words in, and she was like, hey, this is not showing up. So I sent her a different color so that the words were would stand out a little bit more from the fabric. And so I just have to make notes about what changes I'm making. People do get bent out of shape about mistakes in charts, and I totally get that from both sides. It is, now I'm not type A, so it doesn't really bother me if I have a mistake in a chart unless it's something I feel like I can't figure out, but I'm willing usually to just make adjustments. If you have something that's 65,000 stitches and it's 250 years old, sometimes you're going to not quite choose the right color, or sometimes you're going to not quite get all the stitches in exactly the right, place. There just get to be mistakes. And I don't know, I'm trying to think of if there is a designer who's never made a mistake like that. I can't think of anybody. So to me, it's not a big deal. So if you ever see a mistake in a chart, first of all, you can do whatever you want. So if you're like, hey, this tree is 2 stitches shorter than this one, if that bugs you, fix the tree and make it 2 stitches taller. But you can also email the designer and ask if you're ever not sure. I have people send me questions all the time. So once you stitch it, obviously you have to get it framed and photograph it. I make the back of the chart with the key and the fabric and the stitch count. And I always try to include at least one conversion in there for people. And sometimes I might put like an alternate fabric if I feel like it's going to be hard to get. I will say that because I have a shop and because I reproduce samplers or design samplers, I know, hey, these threads right now are really hard to get a hold of. So as a shop owner, I may not want to like use a product that I'm like, shops are going to have a hard time getting a hold of this, because they get, they get frustrated and stitchers get frustrated. So sometimes those decisions are based on ease of acquiring those things. I don't think people like to see a sampler where it's like, hey, the fabric is something I dyed up in my kitchen and you can't get exactly what it was. People don't like that. So you kind of got to use things that people can get a hold of. Okay, so I create the cover, I make all the information, I check it over, I probably make a mistake or two, and then I can print it. Now, this is item number 10. The printer I use is a Xerox, it's called the Xerox VersaLink C405, and it's part of the Xerox free printer program. If you're a designer or shop owner or business owner where you'd like information about that, send me an email. My email address is below, and I can get you referred to Jake, who is my guy. The printer is free. I buy the ink from them. It allows me to make charts as I need them. So, for example, this last market, I released a Savior's Praise. It's a pretty big chart, and it's always a gamble as far as like how something's going to sell. And so I don't remember how many I took to market, maybe 450, and sold out at market and had to come home and print more. It's nice because I don't have to wait for a print shop. I literally can, and I try to keep all the ink in and backups and paper too, but I can sit down, print out another 100 charts, pack them up, and be ready to go. When you do professional printing, it's really nice because you have like the 4-color printing and the heavy cover, and it's, book-like. But then the problem is, like, let's say you release something and people are like, I don't like that. And so then you had 2,000 of them printed and you're like, what am I going to do with all these charts that nobody wants? Or it's really popular and you had 500 printed and now you got to get another 500 printed, and your print shop is like, it's going to take 3 weeks to get these done or whatever. So to me, being able to print charts on the go is really nice. Now I am thinking about maybe starting to use professional services for some of my charts, just to kind of see how it goes. And I might start small just to see how I like it. It really would be nice to be able to send a file to somebody and say, hey, print this and send it, and it's all done and I don't have to do anything. But like I said, there are risks involved because you never know, you know, how well it's going to sell or not. And I have talked to a good number of designers over the years who are like, hey, you know, I have so many charts that never sold. And then they talk about having to have shredders come in and shred them, or that they just have to store them, or they have to rent storage space, or they're in their garage or whatever. And I don't know, it's always hard to know. So those are 10 ways that I go about reproducing a sampler. Like I said, maybe sometime I'll do a video that's a little bit more specific, but hopefully that gives you guys an idea of what all is involved in reproducing a sampler. There are a lot of great designers who reproduce samplers, and some people who used to reproduce samplers that their charts are still available. And so it's just really neat to see all that can be done with reproducing a sampler. I feel like every person who reproduces samplers still has a look, you know, based on the projects, the kinds of samplers that they reproduce, you know, whether they're big and ornate. Like I feel Nicola at Hands Across the Sea, it's always just the big, bold, you know, very detailed, you know, samplers. And, you know, some people do more kind of primitive reproductions, and some people do like maybe mainly marking samplers. So there's a lot of variety there, but I feel like every designer, you're still picking colors, you're still picking fabric, you're still deciding how to put it together. And so I feel like you still get a little feel for the designer behind the reproduction. Okay, that's 10. I'm going to talk a little bit about whips and FOs, FFOs. I finished my Birds and Berries piece by Prairie Schooler, and I pulled it out to do finishing on it, and I can't find it. I don't know where it is right now. I remember folding it up and going like, So when I find it, I'll show you guys. But I did finish that up, and it's very, very pretty. And that one is on my website, Birds and Berries. I'll put a picture here. And it's an old Prairie Schooler chart that has been re-released, and it was really fun to stitch. It's very, if you stitch a lot of Prairie Schooler, it feels different. You know, it's much more kind of shaded and realistic looking than a lot of her other samplers and pieces. But I really had a fun time stitching it. I did it on 32 count with just the DMC, and I had a blast. I finished, and I think I showed you the finished sampler, Harriet Brown by Stacy Nash, and I picked the frame up yesterday and got this put together. So that's what that looks like, and I love it. I love it. I love stitching letters. I love kind of the sparse, spare look of this with the lines. It's just very striking to me. It's almost flag-like. Like it looks summery to me. It looks like the American flag, like the waves and the stripes and the red and everything. So I really, really enjoyed it. This is on a piece of my fabric that I call rock salt, but I don't have any of that right now. But I had a great time. I stitched it in Schoolhouse Red by Gloriana, and when I picked the frame out at Neblitz, I wanted something specifically. I don't know if you can see, there's a little bit of beading on the edge. I wanted something that was small and kind of not sparse, but something, you know, kind of primitive and little. These type of samplers were done by girls that were not necessarily super wealthy. They were just learning how to mark linens for the practicality of it. And so this isn't something that maybe they would have, you know, hung in the parlor and bought a big, you know, expensive frame for. It would have been much more kind of meek and mild than that. So typically I go with a bigger frame, but this one I went with a thinner frame, and there it is, Harriet Brown. So Stacy Nash. And hers, on the cover of her chart, I think she just stitched this upper part and made it into a pillow. But I really liked the whole sampler. And I haven't seen anybody else working on that. I enjoyed it a lot. A lot. Okay, so there was that. I, over the last couple days, have been working on my Carriage House samplings, what is this? Village of Hawk Run Hollow. So I finished square number 5 with the birds there and the trees, and I started block 6 with the little man on the horse there at the top. And I'm liking that one a lot. I am stitching it in silks, mostly the colors that are called for as I've got them, but if not, I'm making substitutions. I haven't had to do that very often yet, but it's really been a fun piece to work on. I'm stitching it on 40 count Grandpa Sleeve by X Jude Designs on Etsy. and I'm having a blast. So there's 12 squares, so I'm, you know, nearing the halfway mark. It's really a fun one to do. I stitched a little bit also on Mary Barr by Stacey Nash also. I must be in kind of a Stacey Nash mood. And this one I'm stitching on a fabric called 40 Count Porcelain by R&R Reproductions. I don't think they make this color anymore. It was something I had in my stash. And I think it's really pretty so far. I plan on doing 2/3 of it and then cutting it, and then I don't know if I'll use the same piece of fabric. I may cut the fabric and then like maybe just dunk it a little bit in tea so it looks slightly dirtier. I really liked that she, you know, they ran out of room stitching the model, and so they had to like piece it together with another piece of fabric, and I loved that. And so that's what I'm actually going to do with mine, and it's fun. Now that one is just, I'm stitching it in Weeks Dye Works. And then I guess I'll show you as long as I've got it here. Here's the this is what the sampler looks like all done. And that's the actual antique. But it's been pretty fun to do so far. I've enjoyed it. I really have. And okay, so another thing, crafty thing that I've done is Jennifer and I have decided to do a project bag exchange once a month. We both were lamenting the fact that we didn't really have enough project bags for the number of projects that we have. So then, you know, the conversation became like, oh, I really should make some more. Maybe I'll, you know, buy some. And I said, maybe we should just do an exchange. So the 15th every month, we're doing a swap of project bags. And so the way I'm doing it is I'm making 2. As long as I'm making 1, I'll make 2. And then that way I get one for myself and one for her. And it's really not much extra work. The tutorial that I've used and that I'm going to use, I think, for the whole year is Vanna's project bag tutorial, and I'll put a link below. It's just like a 22-minute video. It's super quick. I feel like it's a very forgiving and easy way to make a project bag. I don't really enjoy working with the vinyl. I understand why it's handy. I don't enjoy working with vinyl. I don't. And so you're not going to be able to see in these bags, but I think they're very, very cute. I like that I'm trying to just use fabric that I have. A lot of times I collect fabric that it's like, oh, this is weird. You know, it's got cartoony cats on it, or it's, I don't know, whatever. And, you know, it's a good way to use fabrics like that. What else would you use them for? And so it's just kind of fun to have a new, different design. So, Jennifer and I met for lunch yesterday at her favorite restaurant, which is Chicken Salad Chick. We have it here in Hattiesburg. They have like 10 or 12 different ways that they make chicken salad. So it's chicken salad sandwiches, and you get a side, and it's like fruit or pasta salad or soup or whatever. And you get a tiny little like sugar cookie with cream cheese frosting. Also, it's very good. So we met at Chicken Salad Chick yesterday, and this is the one that Jennifer gave me. And she said she was kind of bummed because she had this really cool kind of paisley fabric, but when she was like, oh no, I only have enough for one, so she didn't get to make a second one for herself. And she did do the vinyl, so that means I'll be able to see which project is in the bag, so that's really, really cool. And the colors are neat. She said she didn't really remember where she got the fabric. I made these, so this is with Vanna's tutorial, and when I walked up to the restaurant, I brought 3 of them because I made 3, and I was holding them like this, and I walked up and her face kind of fell, and she was like, oh, those are very fancy. She thought I actually quilted. It's printed fabric. Okay? So it's printed to look like quilt squares. The artist who designed the fabric is called Malka Dabrowski, and I'll put a link to her Etsy store below. She sells fabric that she has hand-dyed, but then she got popular enough that this fabric company, and I don't remember which one, actually makes her fabric. Like, they print it. So you can buy just commercial fabric that is printed with her patterns and things on it. And so I got this on Etsy probably a good 6 or 7 years ago. I just thought it was neat. And lucky for me, it was each kind of column of these squares was about exactly the size I needed to make the bag using Vanna's tutorial. I had to squeeze in a 1/2 inch. But, so there's that. And then there's Velcro, and I put this, it's not homespun, it's actually a black linen on the inside, which I think turned out really cool. And so there's no pocket on the inside or anything. I suppose I could do that if I wanted to, but they're just a nice size. It's got fusible fleece on the inside to help it be just a little bulkier and more protective. And the Velcro is you iron it on, but you sew around it just to keep it on. Now I feel like the reason this is so forgiving is you start with you make a giant rectangle that's like 14 by 31 inches with fabric on both sides. She shows you how to like pull the bottom in, and then you basically flip it up, right, as far up as you want to make the bag, and then you just start sewing here at the bottom, and you go up and around and all the way off. And so it's pretty forgiving as far as like if you're not I'm not a great seamstress, but I think they turned out very cute. Now, because I was on a roll, and I think I might make more this weekend, I thought, you know what, I'm going to make June's bag too, as long as I got all my crap out. And so, Jennifer, if you're watching, just avert your eyes for now. Just look at your stitching, and I'm going to show everybody the way this one turned out. So I made these with fabric that I got at Joann's that was on super clearance. I think it's very, very, very cute. I made 2 of them. Then again, I've got this lining fabric is linen that you buy at the fabric store, and I really like that as opposed to just like a solid flat color. It gives it a little bit more texture. They're very cute. So I might make more this weekend. I pulled out some other fabrics that I had here, and I had bought a whole bolt of the fusible fleece at the time because I had a coupon for like 60% off or something. Okay, that's my FFOs, whips, whatever. That's what I'm working on right now. Okay, what am I all into, folks? It looks like it's going to rain today. I'm kind of into that. I love a good thunderstorm. But I'm all into Australian licorice. While I was at Joann's buying my fusible fleece for 60% off. Retail stores these days, I don't know if you notice, I've been in retail a long time, make you walk through a maze of impulse buys. I see it at TJ Maxx. They do it at Joann's. You see it like at bookstores. They just put a lot of stuff where they're like, hey, maybe they'll buy one more thing, right? I'm a sucker for those sometimes because sometimes it's good stuff. I love Australian licorice, and they have this at Joann's in the checkout aisle, and it's, I don't know how much it is. It's vegan. It's made with sustainable palm oil. 10 ounces. And the pieces are like about that big and about as thick as your finger or your thumb. It's a nice big thick, and they're not hollow on the inside. They're delicious. They come in strawberry and black licorice. If you like licorice and you like Australian licorice, this is a good one. Sometimes I have bought Australian licorice and I'm like, nope, this is good. I gave some to my husband and Harrison, and they were like, this is good. It is. And you can still apply your coupon. You know, if it's like a 40% off your entire regular price purchase, it includes that. I'm all into feeding the birds and the squirrels. And we have done it kind of off and on, and it just started back up again. We've got lovely birds here in the South, and so we started putting seed out. And of course, it's so funny to me how like you can not put seed out, not put seed out, not put seed out, and then you put some out. And it's like they have some like neighborhood like Facebook group where they're like, hey, go to number 10. They've got good stuff. So we get the black sunflower seeds, which the cardinals love. We've got blue jays. I've got a red-bellied woodpecker. I've got finches. There's some set of 3, a trio of mourning doves, and a couple of squirrels. And the stuff that I'm getting is really good. I'm getting really good bird seed where it's like, it's got walnuts in it, and it's got peanuts and dried fruit and all kinds of stuff. And I just sprinkle it on the railing in our backyard on our deck, and the cats just love to watch out the window. Now, our cats are not outside cats, so I'm not luring birds to their certain doom. I'm just feeding them. They're getting fat, and the blue jays in particular look very healthy. So it's kind of just neat to see them, and we have a lot of singing then in the morning. They're singing for their breakfast, so it's kind of cool. I'm all into Walmart pickup. I've only done it one time. I did it this week. Jen's been doing it for a while, and Walmart has this program where you go on their website. You have to have an account, and your bank account has to be tied to it so you can pay. But basically, you can just shop online, tell them everything you want. You pick a time to pick it up, and then they just bring it out to your car. And I was always hesitant to try it because I hate grocery shopping because I've been doing it for so long. But I also like seeing like quirky products and, you know, just maybe you see things that you're like, oh shoot, I forgot we needed ketchup or whatever. So I just worried that like, oh, I'd shop, but then I'd pick up my groceries and I'd be like, ah, crap, I forgot this. So what I did is I just was like, you know what, I'm going to give it a try. And I did. And I couldn't get it for the same day. I got it for the next day. And then I had till like 1:45 in the morning to change anything on my order, change amounts, add things, subtract things, whatever. So that was really cool. And then if stuff isn't in stock, you can say, yes, I'll take a substitution, or no. I just said no substitutions. I want exactly what's on my list. For the most part, they did a really great job. There were a few things that were out of stock, but when they send you a notification, so like you pick an hour, I said 10 to 11. And when you're on your way, you hit the link in the text message that you get or the email that you get. And you can say, I'm on my way. And then they say, it looks like you're about 6 minutes from us. And you're like, ooh, that's creepy. So you drive there in 6 minutes. And then when you pull up, I pulled up and put the car into park. And it said, looks like you're here. And it's like, Big Brother is watching. Big Brother. But thanks, Big Brother, because it makes it so convenient. So you just say, yes, I'm here. I'm in space number 2. My car is red. And they're like, okay, no, we'll be out in a minute. They come out. You roll your window down. You have to sign a little thing. They put it in your car. They ask you, like, do you want your eggs in the front seat with you, or is it okay if I put them in the back? And then you drive away. And that was pretty darn nice. So I don't know that I'll do it every time, but I feel like I broke the seal on that one, and I'm going to be doing it more. I'm all into my husband's ironing board. I'm going to put a picture here. I got it for him for his birthday. He had an iron on his list because he wears dress shirts a lot of times, and I just don't iron. I just don't. You guys see me in the same couple of gray t-shirts all the time. I don't iron. I iron linen. I iron fabric, but I don't iron things to wear. So he picked out an iron, but I was like, oh, I should get him a really nice ironing board because ours squeaks and it's from 1991, I think. It's pretty old. And I got him a really nice ironing board, and it's pretty cool because it's got a hook on one end that's real sturdy, and so you can fold it and actually hang it in a closet sideways. And it's very heavy duty. It's got this really cool thing on the side for you to set your iron in, and then there's this rubber strap that you pull up and over. So even if you hang your ironing board in the closet, the iron is just held in place, and so it's all neatly tucked. And so it was very cool. It's expensive. I think it was like $100. And that was with shipping though. But it's not cheap, but it was really a cool ironing board if you're looking to get a new one. I feel like it would be, last a long, long time. It's very well made. I'm all into sewing clips. I have this little tin, and when I sew, I used to use pins. Just steel pins or whatever, nickel pins, and I don't know, pins are like kind of, if you have anxiety, which I do, you worry like, I'm going to poke myself, I'm going to sew a pin into this and not realize it. And I have done that in the past where like I sewed right over a pin and it went inside the seam, and then I wore it later and got stuck because I'm an idiot. But they can make these things now where they're these little clips, and you can get them on Amazon or at any pretty much sewing or craft store, and you just clip your fabric together, and it's strong enough that it'll hold, like when I made the project bags, it held everything together. And then as you go, you just pop them off. And the thing is, it would be pretty hard to sew one in somewhere and miss it because they're colorful and they're kind of big. And so I just keep a box of them with me while I'm doing my crafting, and they're very, very handy. I think you can get good deals on them on Amazon, as with everything. But like I said, there's something that you're going to be able to find a lot of places. All right, I'm also super in, and I haven't even worn them yet, my red sneakers. Now, I love red shoes. I don't know why. I think it's something like, I feel like it's kind of fun and flashy, and who doesn't want red shoes? And it's hard to find good red shoes. I'm not talking red heels, although I used to wear those. I used to have a pair of red, like 3.5-inch heels. So I got these shoes I ordered online from Cariuma in Brazil, in Rio. And they actually even like wrote my name on the card, which is cool. And this popped up in my Instagram feed. I'm going to tell you people. You know how like they pop up ads, and I feel like the more that you click on, they're like, okay, she likes red shoes, because I get those all the time now. So I got these shoes. They're so cute. They're actually suede. You can get them in leather, canvas, and suede, and they come in different colors. I really want a yellow pair now also. They're comfortable. I have bad feet, but they're comfy. I've always liked Converse, but Converse are made for people who like punishing themselves by walking, because there's no support on the inside of your shoe. There's not a ton of support in this one, but it's squishier and it's wider and it's just more comfortable. So they come in high tops too, which are really, really cool. So I don't know. I'm pretty tickled with my red shoes. Steve said, don't you have a pair like that? And I was like, yeah, but they were $20. And these were $98, I think, with shipping. And I had to wait probably a month to get them in, but they're really, really cool. And yes, I do have red sneakers, but they were cheapies and they will wear out quickly. That's what I'm all into this week. Okay. Not too much left. I got a couple of personal things going on. We're saying a sad farewell to Fitz this week, and he's not in here. Fitz is our black and white tuxedo cat, not really ours. I don't know if you remember the story about Fitz, but 2 summers ago, one of my husband's graduate students asked him if he would babysit her new kitten while she went on vacation. And she was gone for 5 days, and then that weekend I was like, okay, is she going to come get Fitz? And he was like, well, she just got home, and so the blah, 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 and okay. So she's going to come next weekend. I was like, okay, that's fine. That doesn't matter. Well, it just kept getting delayed, and she had excuses and reasons why she wasn't coming. Then it kind of came out that, she had kind of wanted Fitz to be an outside cat because her boyfriend was allergic. And then she was like, ooh, but if he's outside, I don't know. It's tricky here in the South because, cats in our neighborhood get killed. Our cats are not outside cats. And it's just more likely that they'll obviously get hit by a car, pick up fleas, get a disease, get bitten by a dog, get attacked by another cat, be carried off by a pterodactyl, whatever, right? So she was just like, oh, I don't know. So he just ended up here for 2 years. And, kind of at first, it was cool. It was fine. We have too many cats as it is. And it's like, well, what's one more? It's okay. And he's very, very nice. But I would say like 6 months after we got him, or after we got him, 6 months after he was left in our care, Dottie was sitting on my lap and Fitz came up. And he like went to sniff her, and she didn't hit him or anything, but she just went, she just made a face and like hissed. And it's like it broke his brain. Like he suddenly became very unsure of himself. And some cats, when they're unsure of themselves, are hiders, where they will run, skitter away, go under the furniture, if they're not sure about something. Fitz is a charger, which means when he feels anxious, he charges at the other cats. And, at first it was like, okay, well, we can fix this. And we started playing with him and, giving him treats when he was good. And then it just kind of over time, it got to where he was, attacking our cats. And he wasn't really hurting them, but it was like a lot of noise, a lot of screeching, and sometimes at this week I had to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning once, because what happens is, especially with Briar, is he'll come up on her. She doesn't trust him because he's chased her too many times. So she growls at him, and then he goes like that, and then that if you don't handle it right now, there's going to be a huge scuffle. And sometimes she literally poops. Like she just gets so afraid that poop just drops out of her behind. So that's not the best thing at 3 in the morning. And he's not having fun, and they're not having fun. And I feel like he would be a great only cat, or a great, maybe if there's a dog friend or one cat friend, but a cat, a household with multiple cats is not the best fit for him. And I have tried, I've watched videos, I've really tried to do different things with him to try to encourage them to get along, and it's just not working. And I feel like even the last couple months it's gotten worse. And like I said, nobody's getting really hurt. You know, there's some swiping. Nobody's bled or anything. There's been some fur pulled out on occasion. But it's just not, none of us are enjoying it. None of us, Fitz is not enjoying himself because he's so nervous. And my cats have just gotten so that they all stay, you know, like Dottie pretty much lives in a bathroom right now because she just doesn't want to be around him. And so we just need to kind of take back our space and give Fitz a kiss on the face. And I'm going to take him to the shelter on Saturday. We pay a fee, but then I'm going to pay his adoption fee too. And they take down plenty of information so that we can make sure he gets into a house where, you know, he's an only cat or maybe one of two. Because he will play with like Peaches and Zero. He and Zero get along pretty well, but I just feel like it's too many cats for his personality, and he'll just be happier in the long run, and so will we. I wasn't super willing to put up with this for the next, you know, 15 years. It's too hard, and we're saying goodbye. We're glad that we could help him, you know, when we did, and we certainly will miss having him around. We have plenty of pictures, and he's a great little guy. So Fitz is saying goodbye. I hesitated to even share this with you guys because I know that some people will be like, you should, you know, handle your own responsibilities, and, you know, he's your cat, so maybe you should. No, you know what? I kind of know a lot about cats, and we have tried. And, you know, our vet says like, oh, you know, maybe he needs to go outside sometimes. And I just don't want him to get, I have found dead cats in the backyard that have been attacked by neighborhood dogs. There's no leash law here. And I don't want to send him to his doom. I want to send him to a happy family. And I just feel like it's the most responsible thing that we can do. He is fixed. And so we'll miss him, but I know you guys will too. I know a few of you said your cats had a crush on Fitz. And so anyway, goodbye to Fitz. I'm starting to feel better, which is great. I'm being treated for a thyroid condition. Another one of my blood tests came back as abnormal this week, so there's one more thing she's putting me on. I take like handfuls of pills every day, but they're mainly supplements and a couple of prescriptions, and some of those will go away as I start to feel better. Right now, I kind of am like, woo, it's a great day. I'm having a good day. Whoa, really bad day. Great day, bad day. My sleeping is really off. But I would say like overall my pain is leaving. Like I have so much less pain, which is great. My appetite is down, which is okay. I don't really feel like I was much of an overeater. I don't really feel like I'm an overeater. But I feel like I'm satisfied with, a lot of times I'll leave my meal like mostly not eaten. And so I have dropped a couple of more pounds. I hope that continues because it's been a struggle for me for the last 10 years to try to lose any weight. But I am feeling a lot better. I do have just something stressful going on in my life right now that I'm not going to share with you, and I may never share it with you. I found out something recently that's been making me feel very sad and, you know, a little frustrated and you know, just worried, I guess. But I'm working to, you know, improve that and make that better. But my mood also has been really up and down. I belong to a couple of support groups online for this thing that I'm going through, and it's very helpful just to be able to talk to people. And so I guess I would encourage you guys, if you ever are having a tough time, sometimes the people in your life don't necessarily, they're too close to kind of see what's going on, and maybe they haven't gone through what you're going through before, and so they may not, you know, they may sympathize, but they may not really understand. And so it's really cool to find people, you know, and even have that anonymity where it's like, you know, we know each other, we can talk about very private personal things and offer each other support and advice without, you know, the fear of like embarrassing yourself or whatever. So anyway, just sharing. I'm planning a trip soon to go see my mom and dad in South Carolina. I think I've mentioned before that my dad has dementia, and he was diagnosed maybe like 2 years ago. I think 2.5 years ago. It's starting to get worse, and so you know, he's starting to not recognize things that he should recognize, you know, like his house, or you know, I think for the most part he recognizes people that he knows. He's very you know, he's struggling because it's very scary, I'm sure, to have your mind start to not, you know, kind of betray you. And so I just need to make an effort to go out and see my parents more regularly. They're not super far away, but it's just like slightly too far for me to drive. It's like a 10-hour drive, and I just don't feel like I can do it. So I'm looking for plane tickets. Don't you hate shopping for plane tickets? I hate shopping for plane tickets. And I live in a small town. And the nearest bigger airports are an hour and a half to 2 hours away. So then it's like, okay, you know, you save this much money by driving 2 hours each way and paying to park your car, or you could, you know, it's such a mess. But anyway, I'm planning a trip soon, and I'll let you guys know when I'm going to go. Country Sampler ordered some more Maria Finney charts. They got more supplies in, and so I think she said they've got maybe like 14 spots that have opened up just based on the amount of fabric that they could get a hold of. So I'll remind you that the Maria Finney sampler is one that I reproduced for her club, the ABC Girls Club. I just picked it up at the frame shop. You can see me there. I picked it up at the frame shop the other day. This is the original, and it's in the tray that it came in. I don't suppose that it's the original frame. It kind of seems like it's in too good a shape, but it's old. It's definitely old, and the glass is old as well. So that's that. You can get the reproduction by joining the Girls Club, and I'll put a link below so you can learn more about that. There are 3 other designers participating, and so mine was the first, but there are some spots that have opened up. All you have to do is give her a call, send her an email, and she'll get you all signed up. Okay. Three things in my shop, and then I'm going to cut you guys loose. I am continuing to expand my website. I think I've got maybe 2,500 different items now. I keep adding all the time adding. And it's like just when I think like, okay, that's enough things. Nope, I got to find another designer. And I've got more on the way. I've got some really cool stuff on the way from Australia and from France. And I'm working with a guy in Japan to get something really cool. But I got in charts by Reflet des Soirs, which is French, and her name's Isabelle, I want to say. She's very, very, very nice. She's been reproducing samplers for a while, and I'm just going to put pictures here to flip through while I'm talking. One of the things I like about her reproductions is that a lot of them are very French, and she reproduces samplers from the later 1800s, which are going to be those more kind of floral, blooming, full, brighter colors, and I think that's very pleasing. It's something, you know, that there really are samplers for everybody, and not everybody's going to like the primitive, muted, grungy, you know, samplers. Hers are colorful, vibrant colors, beautiful motifs, and so she just really has a lot of nice charts. They're not expensive, and they're beautifully printed. I put them up a week ago tomorrow. So like 6 days ago, I got them in. And within 2 days, a lot of them were already sold out. And so I have more on the way. She's already shipped them. And I ordered more in too. I think I got 23 different titles the first time. And then I have another maybe 10 or 15 that I added in addition to replacing the ones that went out of stock. And so just watch my site. I'll be updating as soon as they probably take about a week or 10 days for those to get here from France. It just depends on how quick the mail is working. But I love those charts. I think I showed that O Marie piece I got on eBay a while back. And I think it was finding that on eBay that I was like, I forgot I really like her charts. So check those out. Also waxers. I want to talk about waxers. I want to wax on and then wax off about waxers. I'll put pictures here too of what waxers are. So I carry waxers from a couple of different folks, including Taylor Nash. Why does that sound like a rock star? I guess there's Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. Anyway, Taylor was going to try to buy a horse with the money that she made making waxers for Nashville Market. I have heard through Stacy that she has enough money to get a horse, which is really cool, but that she wants to get a draft horse, and so it's going to take a little bit longer for them to find just the right one. So it's very cool. She's an 8th grader, and she does a beautiful job making these waxers from antique molds. And then I get some waxers also from CC at the Thread Gatherer. May 31st will be my last day to mail waxers, and I'll have a thing on the front of my website so you can find the waxers very easily. I'm just worried that once we hit June and things get hot, that y'all are going to get a puddle of beeswax in your package, and I don't want that to happen. So after May 31st, I'm going to take them down they'll still be on my site, but I'll just take the amounts, the quantities down to 0 until the weather cools back off again. So if you want to get a waxer, get them now. I have lots of them in stock, and they're very cool. They're actually usable. You can actually drag your thread across them to condition your thread and make it, you know, a little bit smoother looking, more easy to pull through. But also they're just very pretty to put in like your dough bowls or, you know, on a little shelf or with some of your other accoutrements. And so check out those waxers. Third is I got a big shipment from Brenda Gervais this week. Brenda Gervais. I told my husband, hey, I got a shipment from Brenda Gervais today. And he goes, ooh, Brenda Gervais. We always say that. Ooh, Brenda Gervais. I think we just love her name. It sounds so fancy. So she's so nice, and I get a lot of her charts direct from her because the distributors don't stock everything. And there are a good number of her charts that I just can't get anymore because she doesn't even wholesale them anymore. You might be able to get them on her website, but I stock as many as I can. I can't remember. I've got a goodly number of her patterns, a goodly number. But one thing that I never got in was and I'll put pictures here, was the wordplay charts. And I know they were very popular like 2 years ago, and there was a big run on them. So I was kind of feeling like, you know what? People probably already have these. But then I looked at them again and I was like, but they're really cute and they stitch up pretty quick. And so I've got all 12 months in now, and those are not available at distributors. So when I run out, I'll have to order from Brenda again. It typically takes me about 4 to 6 weeks to get an order from Brenda, which is totally fine because it's worth the wait. They're just wonderful, wonderful charts. I did get back in the school year summer schoolhouse. It's like a 4 pincushion set that Vanna recently did finishing for, and I've got those back in too. But I think I only am out of 4 of her charts right now. They're hard to keep in stock because y'all jump on those and get those, and they're very pretty to do, and they're fun to do too. I've enjoyed stitching a good number of her pieces. That's all I gotta have today. That's all I got. That's all I have to say. It's all I'm gonna say. I hope that you guys have a great weekend. I think I'm gonna spend the afternoon making more project bags. It just really is so fun, and as long as I've got it all out, it's going to be fun to kind of work through stuff. I think I also would like maybe this weekend to clean through my fabric drawer. Jennifer was looking at it too, going through her fabric. And so maybe I need to like find a way to kind of bundle up the smaller pieces. I don't necessarily want to get rid of them because sometimes you need a small piece to finish a small. But there are some fabrics that it's like, really, am I ever going to use this? And I'll either donate them or take them to our next crafting get together and see if anybody wants them for anything. I've kind of been thinking of doing, so I started a quilt project a while back. I know I did. Who was I reading? Maggie Bononomy was in one of her books. She made I don't know what you would call it, like a postage stamp quilt. She made a blue and, like off-white quilt of squares that were like 1.5 inch squares. And it was like huge quilt with and it was just the same kind of blue, but just like slightly different prints and very subtle. And I thought it was very striking. And I kind of would like to make a cherry red and off-white checked quilt. And I'm thinking, I've seen them sometimes where they do them as a 9 patch. And if I could just do, some on the weekends, not sit down and try to like get it done in a weekend or anything, but just do it as I feel like it. I would really love that. I like the way they look, and I love, I think cherry, just, like this kind of red maybe with off-white. So I may need to run down to the Fabric Dock in Wiggins, which is a really cool little quilt store. Maybe I'll go there on Saturday and see what she's got for fabrics and maybe start to put that together. I think it'd be really fun. I know they make little packets that you can get a pre-cut, but maybe, I don't know, I'll just look around and see what I find. So I hope you guys have a great weekend, and I will see you sometime real soon. Take care. Bye-bye.